Jake Carter sat quietly in his seat inside the large, glowing classroom. Around him sat many different types of alien students. Some had blue skin, others had long arms, wings, or tentacles. Jake was the only human in the room. He looked small and soft compared to the others. The classroom was part of a spaceship called the Enlightened Star. It was a learning ship of the Galactic Union, floating in deep space. Here, young aliens came from many planets to study together. Jake was part of an exchange program. Earth had recently joined the Galactic Union, and Jake was the first student sent to study among aliens. The other students looked at Jake with curiosity. They often whispered about him. "Humans are weak," one alien whispered. "Yes," another said. "They don't have claws, they can't fly, and they live such short lives." "But they are smart," someone added. "Smart doesn't help if you get eaten," the first one laughed. Jake heard them, but he didn't say anything. He'd learned that it was better to listen first. Many aliens judged humans by how they looked. But Jake knew something they didn't. Humans were much more than they appeared. The class began when the door opened and Professor Talvek floated into the room. Talvek was a thin creature with glowing eyes and no mouth. He spoke through thought waves, which every student heard in their mind. "Today," said Talvek, "we begin a new topic in galactic history. It is about the deadliest planet in the galaxy." The room became silent. Some students gasped. One alien with 6 eyes raised a hand. "You mean the planet the scouts call X-Death?" "Yes," said the professor. "That is its name in the archives. Planet X-Death. It is known by many names, but they all mean one thing: death." The lights dimmed, and a hologram appeared in the air. It showed a spinning planet with green lands, blue oceans, and white clouds. It looked beautiful. Jake stared at it. Something about it looked familiar, the professor continued. "This planet is in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Many have tried to explore it. It's all failed. The planet is full of dangers, violent storms. It's burning. Heat, freezing cold, deadly creatures, poisonous plants, strong earthquakes, constant disasters." The students looked scared. One with fur all over his body shook his head. "Why does such a planet exist?" he asked. "No one knows," Talvek answered. "But all agree it is not safe. No colony has survived. Scout drones are destroyed quickly. Even robotic ships vanish. Many believe the planet is cursed." Jake listened closely. The professor continued showing images. Huge tornadoes, lightning storms, forest fires, bears, wolves, spiders, volcanoes, floods, giant waves. Every picture made, Jake's eyes grow wider. He leaned forward. His heart was beating faster. "This can't be right," he thought. "This looks like Earth." The professor played a video from a failed alien mission. A team of robotic explorers landed on a grassy hill. Within minutes, they were attacked by insects, soaked by rain, and hit by lightning. Their systems failed. The video ended in static. Machines cannot survive long," the professor said. The students laughed nervously. "Who would live there?" said one with horns. "Only fools," another replied. "Or monsters," a third added. Jake smiled a little. He remembered camping in the forest. Back on Earth, he had once been bitten by fire ants. Another time, he had hiked during a storm. He had run from a bear once. He had eaten wild mushrooms, climbed rocky hills, and swum through cold rivers. For humans, that was normal. He raised his hand. "Professor Talvek, has anyone ever found intelligent life on that planet?" The professor shook his glowing head. "The scans do not show any strong signals. Some believe there might be primitive creatures, but no one has ever returned to confirm," Jake thought. "That's because your scans are too weak to detect human technology, and you never survived long enough to look closer." The bell rang. Class was over. As the students walked out, they talked about the dangerous planet. "Maybe it eats metal," one said. "Maybe the weather is alive," said another. Jake stayed behind. He looked once more at the hologram of the planet. A blue ocean, white clouds, and green lands. He had flown over that sea. He'd seen those mountains. He whispered to himself, "That's Earth. That's my home." He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just learned a very big secret. Jake now understood that the aliens feared his world, and they didn't even know it was called Earth. They didn't know that humans lived there. They didn't know that humans survived there. He walked out of the classroom with a new thought in his mind. Let them think what they want. The truth is, we're stronger than they know. Jake Carter sat alone in the ship's study hall. Round him, alien students played games, studied data, or chatted using their translators. But Jake's eyes were on his holoscreen. He wasn't watching a movie or reading a lesson. Something important, the galactic coordinates of Planet Xdeath. He typed carefully. The computer made a soft sound and showed a star map. A red circle blinked around one small blue and green planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Jake zoomed in. He stared at the image. It was Earth. He sat back, shocked but not surprised. Deep inside, he had already guessed the truth. The planet the aliens feared the most, the one they called Xdeath, was his home. He thought about what the professor had said in class. Storms, wild beasts, poisonous plants, and deadly weather. For the aliens, Earth was a nightmare. But for humans, it was just daily life. Jake smiled slowly. He remembered his uncle fighting off a wild boar during a camping trip. He thought of his cousin surviving snake bites twice. He thought of his sister, a nurse who worked through a deadly virus. His people were not weak, they were survivors. Still, he kept the truth to himself. No one on this ship knew that Earth was Planet Xdeath. Even the Galactic Union seemed confused. Maybe their drones failed to detect cities. Maybe their ships crashed before they could report anything. It didn't matter. The important thing was Jake knew the truth now. Later that day, the class returned to the lecture room. This time, the professor had a new plan. Today, said Professor Talvik, you will all learn how hard it is to survive on Planet Xdeath. The students looked worried. You will enter a survival simulation. It will place you on the surface of the planet. You will have to live for 24 Earth hours. You must find food, stay warm, avoid predators, and escape the storms. Jake sat up. He was interested now. Each student took turns using the simulation pod. It was a clear tube that connected to the mind, showing a fully real-feeling world inside. The aliens would believe they were walking on the planet, though it was all fake. The first student, a large insect-like alien, entered the pod. The simulation started. The screen showed him landing in a forest during heavy rain. He tried to fly, but the wind knocked him into a tree. He screamed as ants covered his legs. A loud boom shook the air. Lightning struck nearby. The pod turned. Red failed. Survival time, 6 minutes. The next alien, pink-skinned one with tentacles, tried walking through a desert. She was bitten by a snake in 4 minutes. Another one tried swimming in the ocean. The shark simulation ended that test in under 3 minutes. Every student failed. Jake watched with quiet amusement. To him, all these dangers were normal things back on Earth. Nothing special, just nature. Finally, the professor looked at Jake. Human student, do you wish to try? Jake nodded. Yes, Professor. The class watched closely, and he whispered, This will be quick, said one. He'll get eaten fast, said another. Jake stepped into the simulation pod. The lights dimmed. Suddenly, Jake found himself in a forest. Trees stood tall around him. The wind blew strong. Rain poured down. The sound of thunder rolled in the sky. Jake smiled. This looks like my summer trip to Oregon, he whispered. He walked calmly through the forest. He spotted a small cabin and went inside. He looked around and found matches and canned food. He made a small fire. Later, a dog barked outside. It looked mean, but Jake held out his hand. Hey, buddy, I'm not your enemy. The simulation allowed him to pet the dog. The dog wagged its tail and followed him. Jake found clean water from a river. He boiled it over fire. From leaves, hours passed. The screen outside the pod showed the humans surviving, relaxing, and helping the virtual dog stay dry. The alien students stared in shock. He's still alive? He made fire? He tamed the predator? The professor was silent. His glowing eyes blinked in surprise. Finally, after 24 full hours, the pod opened. Jake stepped out calmly. The dog barked and vanished as the simulation ended. The room was silent. Then one student clapped. Slowly others joined. Jake simply said, "That was a nice walk in the woods." Professor Talvek spoke slowly. "You... survived the full time? No student has ever done that. How did you know what to do?" Jake smiled. "I've done it before. Many times." The professor tilted his head. "Where?" Jake just said, "Home." Then he walked out of the room, leaving the others staring behind him. Inside, Jake felt something powerful. Pride. Not revenge, just truth. The truth that humans were not weak. They were strong in quiet ways. They didn't grow claws or wings. They grew knowledge, courage, and the ability to adapt. And now, the galaxy had just seen a small glimpse of what a human could do on a planet everyone else feared. Jake Carter sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. Around him, the small room inside the Galactic Union ship was silent. The walls glowed a soft blue. His bag was in the corner, his datapad on the table. But Jake's mind was far away back. On Earth, he couldn't stop thinking about the simulation. Every alien student had failed to survive Planet X death, but he had done it without fear. That simulation was based on his world. That dangerous, deadly planet was Earth. The aliens had no idea. Jake stood up and walked to his datapad. He opened the star map again. There it was, Planet X death. Same shape, same location, same weather patterns. It was 100% Earth. Somehow the Galactic Union didn't know that humans lived there. Or maybe they didn't believe anyone could. He opened the simulation file and reviewed it. Deadly forest creatures. That was a normal camping trip. Dangerous weather. Just an average week in Florida. Wild animals? His uncle had fought off a mountain lion once and lived poisonous plants. His science teacher had taught him which ones to avoid in middle school. Jake laughed to himself. They think this planet is a horror show, but it's just Tuesday for us. The next day, Jake entered the lecture hall. The alien students looked at him differently now. Some gave him space. Some whispered when he passed. One even gave a respectful nod. Jake noticed all of it, but he kept his face calm. Professor Talvek began speaking. "We will now discuss the failure of colonization on Planet X death." He brought up files of alien missions. Here is the Zarnok mission. The crew landed near a mountain. 1 hour later, an earthquake destroyed their base. Here's the Boraxian probe. It scanned the area, but flying insects blocked its view. The machine overheated from sunlight. Here's the Meckler attempt. Heavy storms and large creatures destroyed all equipment. These missions had happened over the last 200 years. Aliens had been trying to explore Earth for a long time, but they never got far. Most didn't survive even a day. Jake raised his hand. "Professor, are there any signs that a species might have adapted to live there?" The professor paused. There have been odd signals. Weak radio waves, strange heat signatures. Some experts believe there might be early lives, small animals, or simple tribes. But no one believed intelligent life could survive such a place. Jake smiled again. "They had no idea," the professor continued. "Some galactic scientists say the planet is testing us, that it is alive. Others believe it's a natural death world, a place that nature made so hard, only the strongest can survive." The students nodded in agreement. One of the alien students raised a question. Could a species evolve on that planet? The professor looked uncertain. Maybe, but they would be very different from us. Stronger bones, better reflexes, fearless minds. No normal species would survive the heat, the cold, the air, or the constant danger. Jake whispered to himself, "Then we are not normal." After class, Jake went to the ship's data center. He searched old records about Earth and the Galactic Union. To his surprise, Earth had been discovered before. A few alien scouts had landed, taken samples, and left. But most of the files were marked incomplete, dangerous, or lost. Some were labeled classified, so they did find us. but never stayed long enough to learn who we are, Jake thought. He dug deeper and found an old report. It was over 90 years old. The report described a small ship flying over a human city. The aliens thought it was abandoned. But then they saw lights turn on, cars move, and people walk. They panicked and left. Jake shook his head in disbelief. They didn't realize we were the locals. He downloaded the file and saved it. That night, as Jake looked out the window of the ship, he thought about Earth again. Remembered his grandmother telling him, "We are children of fire and ice. We live where others run. We fight where others hide. That's who we are." He now understood those words better than ever. Earth wasn't dangerous to humans. It was made for them, tested them, trained them, made them strong. Humans didn't survive in soft places. They came from storms, sickness, hunger, wild beasts, and even war. They didn't just live through danger, they grew up in it. Jake realized something even more important. The rest of the galaxy didn't know this. They believed humans were weak. But once they found out the truth, everything would change. Jake sat down and wrote a message to Earth's United Planetary Council, to Earth Command. "I have discovered that the Galactic Union calls Earth planet Ixteth. They believe no intelligent life can survive there. They have tried to colonize and failed many times. They think the planet is cursed. They don't know it is our home. They're afraid of it tanned. They don't even know why. May give us an advantage. Use it wisely." Jake Carter, human student aboard the enlightened Star Jake, sent the message. Knowing it would take weeks to reach Earth, but he felt better. The truth was out. Now it was time to decide what to do next. He could stay silent and let the aliens fear the unknown, or he could reveal the truth and show them what humans were really made of. Either way, the game had changed. Jake smiled again, this time with a new kind of confidence. The galaxy didn't know who they were dealing with, but they would soon. The next few days felt strange for Jake Carter. His classmates, once distant and cold, had started to treat him differently. Some whispered behind his back while others avoided him. The truth was, they were starting to realize something important. Jake had survived the deadly planet they were so afraid of. Jake didn't mind. He didn't need their respect or attention. He had learned the important lessons long ago. On Earth, humans had survived far worse than anything the galaxy could throw at them. The aliens didn't know it, but the truth was, humans were much more powerful than they appeared. But soon, a new event was coming that would force the aliens to see just how strong humans could be. It was a survival challenge. And Jake was about to prove his point. The announcement came one morning in the lecture hall. "Today," Professor Talvik said in his usual soft voice, "we will have a survival challenge. It will take place on planet Ixteth," the students murmured. "Ch. Up straighter." The professor's eyes flickered across the class. "Each of you will face a simulation. You will be placed on the surface of the planet. The goal is simple. Survive for 24 Earth hours. Find food. Find shelter. Avoid the dangers. Get through. You will be graded based on how well you perform." Jake felt a small smile on his face. He knew what was coming. The aliens, who had barely survived their earlier simulation, would now face the real challenge, the challenge of surviving on Earth. The first alien, a tall creature with green scales and a long tail, stepped into the simulation pod. His body was built for climbing and strength. But as the simulation began, he immediately encountered a problem. The forest simulation started with an unexpected rainstorm, and his tail became tangled in thick vines. He struggled, but the rain quickly made the ground slippery. Strong wind knocked him off his feet, and he fell into a pool of muddy water. Failed. Survival time to 12 minutes. The class was silent. The next student, a smaller alien with 4 eyes and thin limbs, stepped up. She was quick and nimble, but as the simulation started, a pack of wild wolf-like creatures appeared. They surrounded her. She ran, but the wolves were faster. The simulation ended in minutes. Failed. Survival time to 8 minutes. Next up was an alien with wings, built for flying. He soared high above the simulated planet's surface, dodging clouds and reaching for the stars. But suddenly, a powerful storm hit, and the winds became too strong. His wings couldn't hold against the storm. The simulation showed him crashing into a mountain. His wings damaged, failed. Survival time minus 15 minutes. One by one, the aliens failed. They couldn't adapt. They couldn't survive. The planet's dangers were too much for them. They didn't know how to think like humans, how to use the land, how to find simple food, or how to read the signs of a storm. Jake was next. He stepped into the simulation pod. As the lights dimmed and the soft hum of the machine started, he found himself standing on the surface of a forest. The same forest he had seen during his trip to Oregon. The wind was strong, but Jake didn't worry. He had hiked in worse weather. He could feel the cold rain soaking his clothes, but it didn't bother him. He had been through worse on Earth. He moved swiftly, avoiding puddles. Stepping carefully around rocks and mud, he found a small shelter, an old cabin that had been abandoned long ago. Inside, he found canned food and matched exactly what he needed. The simulation, which had taken many of his classmates by surprise, was simply a challenge to Jake. One more test to pass. Jake knew the storm was coming.
Ow.
He set a small fire inside. The cabin wrapped himself in a blanket and waited. The rain beat against the walls, and the wind howled outside. But Jake felt calm. He could already imagine what was coming. The same thing that happened back on Earth. When a storm came, he would survive. That was what humans did. As the simulation continued, Jake's thoughts drifted back to the alien students. They had been so confident before, they'd assumed that Earth Planet X death was a nightmare, a place where nothing could live. They hadn't realized how tough the human spirit was. Jake smiled. In the simulation, a wild dog wandered near the cabin. The dog's eyes glowed in the dark. It looked dangerous, but Jake had dealt with worse animals on Earth. He went outside and kneeled down, holding out his hand. The dog growled at first, but then it slowly stepped closer. Jake let the dog sniff him. It was just a wild animal looking for shelter. He petted its fur, and it calmed down. The simulation screens showed the dog sitting beside Jake by the fire. The alien students watched in awe. They had all failed to survive this planet, but Jake was thriving. The hours passed. The storm cleared, the fire crackled. Jake had survived. He had found food. He had made a friend. He had made it through the night just as he had done many times back home. When the simulation finally ended, Jake stepped out of the pod, looking calm and collected. The alien students stared at him, wide-eyed. That was amazing. One alien whispered, "How did you do that?" Jake simply replied, "It's not magic, it's survival. And we humans are really good at it." Professor Talvek looked stunned. "You survived the full 24 hours. No one else has ever done that. How? How did you know what to do?" Jake shrugged. "I've done it before. I've lived on planet Xth my whole life." The professor blinked. You are from Earth?" Jake nodded. "Yes, Professor. I am from planet Xth." The students were silent for a moment. Then one by one, they began to clap. Slowly, the room filled with applause. Jake didn't need the applause. He didn't need anyone to tell him how strong humans were. He already knew. But it felt good to see the aliens start to understand. Earth wasn't a cursed planet. It wasn't a death trap. It was the birthplace of the strongest species in the galaxy. Jake stepped out of the room, a small smile on his face. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about knowing who he was and where he came from. And now the galaxy knew too. Jake Carter could feel the eyes on him as he walked through the halls of the enlightened star. Since the survival challenge, everything had changed. His classmates, once curious, even mocking now, looked at him with a mixture of fear and awe. It was as if they finally understood the truth. Humans came from planet Xteth, the planet they all feared. Jake didn't mind. He knew what they were thinking. They had seen humans as weak, fragile beings, but now they had witnessed the strength humans possessed. He wasn't special. He was just a product of Earth's the deadliest, most unforgiving planet in the galaxy. But the aliens didn't know the half of it. As Jake sat down in the cafeteria, A soft beep from his datapad caught his attention. It was a message from Earth Command. He had been expecting this. The message was short and to the point. From Earth Command 2, Jake Carter Jake. We've received your report about the Galactic Union's misunderstanding of Earth. We are currently reviewing all relevant data. Please remain cautious. If the Union realizes the truth about humanity's strength, it could lead to tensions. Keep a low profile. More instructions to come. Jake read the message again. It was clear. The Earth Command wasn't just worried about the aliens finding out Earth was Planet X death. They were worried about how the Galactic Union would react. They had to tread carefully. The rest of the galaxy discovered that humans had evolved. On the deadliest planet, they might look at Earth in a completely different way. Jake frowned. He had suspected this would happen. The moment the aliens learned the truth, their perception of humanity would change forever. And that could be dangerous. For Earth, later that day, Jake walked to the lecture hall. As he entered, the class grew quiet. The professor was standing at the front, his glowing eyes fixed on Jake. But today, there was something different in the air. Tension. The professor began speaking, his voice calm but firm. Class, we have just received a new order from the Galactic Council. It seems that our study of Planet X Death Earth has caused quite a stir. The students looked at each other. Jake's heart raced. Could already guess what was coming. The professor continued. The Galactic Council has decided to launch a full investigation into Earth. They want to know everything its people, its technology, its resources. They want to understand how a species survived on a planet so dangerous. Jake felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was exactly what he had feared. What does that mean for us? Asked one of the alien students, a creature with multiple arms and a large, round head. It means, Talvik said slowly, that the Union now views Earth as a potential. Right. A quiet murmur spread across the room. The students looked at each other, their faces filled with unease. Jake knew what they were thinking. They feared Earth. They feared humanity. Humanity, Talvik continued. It's proven that it can survive on a planet that destroys everything else. This raises many questions. Could Earth use this strength to dominate the galaxy? Could humans be planning something? Jake swallowed hard. He knew this was coming. He'd lived on Earth all his life. He knew how powerful humans were, but he also knew how peaceful they were, at least. Most of the time. But now the galaxy was starting to see humanity as a force, and that could be dangerous. The professor looked at Jake, his glowing eyes reflecting a strange mix of curiosity and caution. Jake, the Galactic Union wants answers. What can you tell us about humanity? Jake stood up slowly. He knew this was his moment. The aliens were scared. They didn't understand humans. They had never seen Earth in its true light. But Jake would show them the truth. He would explain it, but he wouldn't make them afraid. That was the last thing Earth needed. Humans are survivors, Jake said quietly, his voice steady. We come from a planet that is hard to live on, but that's what made us strong. We've learned how to adapt. We've learned how to fight, to think, to survive. We don't conquer worlds. We survive them. And we help each other. We care for our own, even in the toughest of times. The room was silent. The professor and the students were all watching Jake closely. For a moment, it felt as if the entire galaxy was waiting for him to speak. Jake continued, We don't want war. We don't want to fight anyone. But we also won't run from a fight if it's needed. We will stand and protect ourselves and our people. Paused, letting his words sink in. I understand why you're scared. I know you think we're a threat, but you have to understand Earth is not a weapon. You're not monsters. You're just a people who learn to survive in the hardest place in the galaxy. Jake looked around the room. The alien students were no longer laughing or whispering. They were listening. You don't need to be afraid of us. We're not the enemy. But if we're pushed, we will defend our home. That's what humans do. Professor Talvik didn't respond right away. He stood there, his thoughts swirling. Then he spoke, his voice soft but firm. Thank you, Jake. You've given us much to think about. Jake nodded and returned to his seat. The Tension in the room didn't disappear, but it felt like something had changed. For the first time, the aliens were starting to see Earth not as a threat, but as a survivor. The next few weeks passed slowly. Jake continued his studies, but it was clear that things had changed. The Galactic Union had begun to look at Earth through different eyes. Some saw it as a potential ally, others as a potential threat. Jake was starting to feel the weight of his position. He had told the truth, but it was a dangerous truth. Now, the galaxy was watching Earth closely. Jake didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. The game had changed, and Earth would never be the same again. The days that followed Jake's speech in the lecture hall were strange. The aliens who had once seen humans as weak and fragile now watched Jake with a different kind of respect. Some still whispered among themselves, unsure of what to think. But there was no denying it. Jake had shown them that Earth was not just a death trap, but a place that created the strongest survivors. Jake knew the truth. Humans were not invincible, but they were adaptable. They could survive where other species might fail. And now, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to see that. But it wasn't just the aliens aboard the Enlightened Star who were watching. The Galactic Union had begun its own investigation into Earth, just as Jake had feared. Ships from different species were sent to observe the planet, and the Council was working on a report that would soon be shared with all the major factions. Jake had no doubt that this report would change everything. One evening, as Jake sat in his quarters aboard the ship, he received another message from Earth Command. He opened the message carefully, his heart pounding in his chest. From Earth Command 2, Jake Carter. Jake, the Galactic Union has started to observe Earth closely. We believe they now understand our strength, and some factions are already viewing us as a potential ally. Others, however, fear the idea of a species born on the deadliest planet. We must be cautious. The Council will vote soon on how to officially approach Earth's involvement in the Union. We need you to continue gathering information. Stay sharp. The next few weeks will be critical. Earth Command. Jake sat back and let out a long breath. Things were happening fast. The aliens had started to see humanity's potential, but not all of them were comfortable with it. Fear and respect were a dangerous combination. He had seen it before in humans. They feared what they didn't understand, but Jake knew something the aliens didn't. They didn't know just how deeply human survival instincts ran. They didn't understand how far Earth's people could go when pushed. The following day, the Professor Talvek called for a meeting. The students gathered in the lecture hall where an unexpected silence filled the room. This was different from the usual lessons. There was a seriousness in the air. Talvek stood at the front, his glowing eyes scanning the room. Class, today, we have received new orders from the Galactic Union. They have decided to vote on Earth's status in the Galactic Union. They have recognized the strength of humanity. The students looked around, exchanging nervous glances. Jake could feel the tension building. He knew this was the moment when everything would change. The galaxy was on the verge of deciding how it would treat Earth. We must be careful, Talvek continued. Some factions are eager to welcome humans into the Union, seeing them as valuable allies. Others, however, fear Earth. They fear that humans could be a force unlike any they have ever seen. A species born from the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. ... The room fell silent. Jake raised his hand. Talvek nodded for him to speak. Professor, Jake began, I think it's time we told the truth. Earth is not the monster they think. It is. We don't want to dominate the galaxy. We just want to be part of it. We've survived because we have to. And if the galaxy wants us as allies, we can help. But if you push us, if you treat us like a threat, then we will defend ourselves. We're not looking for war, but we will not stand by if we're pushed into one. Talvek's eyes flickered as he processed Jake's words. The professor had always been calm, but there was a tension in his expression now, I understand. Jake, you've shown us what humanity can do, Talvek said softly. But the rest of the galaxy... ... They don't know you the way we do now. Jake looked around the room. The alien students were watching him carefully. Some of them still looked afraid, others thoughtful. The truth was clear to Jek: humanity had always been underestimated, but that didn't mean it was weak. In fact, it meant humanity had the power to surprise. That evening, the Galactic Council made its decision. The vote was sent across all galactic channels and it was broadcasted to every species. The Council decided to grant Earth a seat in the Galactic Union, but with conditions. Earth would be allowed to send ambassadors, share knowledge, and form alliances. But the Council also placed Earth on a probationary status, meaning that if humans did anything to cause concern, the Union would reconsider their place. Jake felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. It was a chance for Earth to prove that it didn't need to be feared. It just needed to be understood. The news spread quickly. Earth's ambassadors would meet with the Council soon to discuss the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Jake, along with other human representatives, would travel to the heart of the Galactic Union to speak for Earth. He would stand before the galaxy and show them who humanity truly was. As Jake stood in front of the large window aboard the enlightened star, looking out at the endless stars, he thought about Earth, the planet that had shaped him, the planet that had made him strong. He had never felt prouder to be human. The galaxy had underestimated them. They had thought Earth was just a dangerous, uninhabitable planet. But now Earth would show the galaxy what it really meant to survive, and that humanity was not to be feared, but to be respected. Jake smiled. Earth had always been the deadliest planet, but it had also created the strongest, most resilient species in the galaxy. Now, the galaxy would know